Susan B. Anthony was a very courageous woman, and she fought for what is right. Susan B. Anthony was born February 15, 1820. She was the second oldest of 7 children and 5 girls and 2 boys. She was always interested in laws and rights. She always had her own opinion. Sometimes people are famous because of their job and some because of what they invented or found, but Susan B. Anthony was famous because of her speeches and how she was the most interested in the women's rights movements. You can always get another inventor or another pilot, but you cannot get another person like Susan B. Anthony. She was a very nice and fierce woman, so if you studied her and tried, you could not be like her. She had a very nice and interesting life, and she had some really cool facts, and if you knew all of them, you would be amazed. Susan B. Anthony had a crazy childhood, but she still stood up for what was right. Susan B. Anthony had a very rough childhood. Her sister Eliza died when she was 2 years old, so that was a very sad time for her. She had a very hard time with her sister dying, so she tried to occupy herself by reading and working with her father. She lived in Adams, Massachusetts until she was 6. She and her family moved to Rochester, New York. When she moved, she missed her old house, but she managed to keep reading, and she kept studying. Susan wanted to be a teacher when she grew up, so she went to school. One day, when she was about 10, she was at school learning long division, but she had a question, so she stood up, and the teacher told her to sit down or she would be kicked out. You had a question in the olden days, and you would stand up. After that, she decided to get homeschooled, so her mom taught her. Susan did not like how women did not have the right to vote, so she tried to stand up for what was right, so she started studying women's rights. That was one reason why she was famous. Many reasons made Susan famous. As she grew older and wiser, one day when she was older, she was at a conference and she stood up to speak, and she was immediately told to sit down, and the people who told her said the sisters were not invited to speak but to listen and learn. Susan did not like this, and she got very, very mad, so she left the conference immediately. Susan could not believe that someone would actually say that. This is when she got even more interested in women's rights. She made a new friend whose name was Elizabeth. Susan and her new friend Elizabeth started a group called the New York State Temperance Society. This was a group that was all about women's rights, and actually a lot of women joined this group. Susan was surprised that there were a lot of women there. In 1857, Susan shocked the New York State Teachers Convention by demanding that black and white children attended the same school. Susan did not only fight for women's rights, but she also fought for civil rights. She was a very nice but demanding person. She would speak around the world just so that some people would change their mind. Some people did, but most did not, so she continued to speak over and over again, but some people just would not change their mind. Susan had many interesting facts, and some are very cool, but some are sad. Susan was one of the bravest people that I know. So if I lived in that time, I would be a part of her group and I would be her friend. Susan had lots of that she had to do in her life, so I think you should know some things that she did. In Utica, New York, she was going to a hall where she was going to speak, but some people did not like that. A mob prevented her from entering, and so she could not speak in this hall. Susan got very mad about this, but she just kept calm instead of bashing them. Susan could have said something like, "You all should be ashamed of yourselves. You all are rude and selfish people." But instead, she just left and talked to Elizabeth about it, so that way she would not have to get all mad. One day, when she was feeling really confident, she wrote a letter to her sister saying something like, "I have finally done it. I have put my vote in." 3 weeks later, Susan was arrested for voting. Henry Selden bailed Susan out, and Susan had to go to trial. Her trial started June 17, 1873. Susan kept on bashing the judge again and again until the judge just gave up because Susan was so demanding, and she had a great lawyer, so Susan never paid a fine or went to jail. So she basically won the case. I think that that fact was so amazing, and I think that she did not do anything wrong. I think that she was just standing up for what was right. Susan definitely had a good friend because Elizabeth said Nothing that Susan could do or say could break my friendship with Susan, and I know nothing could uproot her affection for me. After I found that out, that Elizabeth said that, I knew that they were even more friends than I thought. I think that statement that Elizabeth said was amazing, and if I said that to one of my friends, they would know how I feel around them. There are lots of things that you can be, like a pilot, inventor, or a doctor, but there can only be one Susan B. Anthony.